Every park has a story, and every story has a legacy. Welcome to Legacy Parks on the Daily Parks and Rec Show. This is our host, Richard Bienvenu, and we're live every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Together, we'll explore the history, impact, and lasting legacy of the parks that have shaped our communities for generations. We'll uncover the stories, people, and moments that make this park truly unforgettable. Legacy Parks, where every park tells a story. In this episode, we explore the stories behind America's historic parks, the people who shaped them, and the lasting impact parks and recreation have had on communities across the nation.
All right, we are live again. This is the second voyage of the Legacy, and we even have a logo. How you like that logo, Richard?
I like it. I like that logo.
Yeah,
it's really
good.
cool.
That's our V1.0. I'm sure I've already suggested a few other changes because under Legacy it says Parks of America. That I can hardly read it. But
yeah. I see what it says.
Yeah. So we'll have it say
you need to be able to see Legacy Parks.
Right. And the whole concept here. Well, Richard, why don't you tell them what you think the concept is, and then I'll kind of color it in just so that people kind of see the vision of this weekly show.
Shall I start off with how this all came about?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I have a radio show in New Orleans. It's the only locally owned radio station left in New Orleans called WGSO. And so I've had a radio show on there for a little over a year now, and it's just a one-time deal. I do it every Monday at 5 o'clock and 5 in the afternoon, and it's a 1-hour show. And I mainly interview people. I do content at the beginning. It all has to do. It's called Completely New Orleans. It all has to do with New Orleans, with the history, the food, the culture, the blah, what's happening, et cetera, et cetera. And so I interview people that are in New Orleans, that are involved in New Orleans, that have something to do with New Orleans. And so Craig, who had recently joined our exercise group, and he was talking after our exercise was over and was sitting on the porch there at the Audubon clubhouse, like that we do every time we finish work at 7:15 p.m. And he was just telling me what he does. And I thought, God, that would be really interesting interviews. So I said, Craig, would you want to come on the show and I'll interview you? So the way it works is that the interview comes on in the second 10 minutes after the first break. And at the very beginning, I do content that's related somehow to my interview. Yeah. And so I did the first 5 minutes on NORD, and which we're going to talk about today. And the second 5 minutes we did on Audubon Park and City Park, both historical parks.
Yeah.
And then so we did that, and Craig contacted me like the next day or whenever it was, and he said, hey, I think we can do a show.
Yes.
We can do a show with,
yes.
With this content. And we can talk about parks, legacy parks, historical parks all over America, and maybe even, who knows, maybe even overseas. So
yeah. Well, I have been a junkie for little documentaries and YouTube documentaries. And I've noticed when AI came out, I started seeing these documentaries about what New Orleans looked like back in the 1700s and what San Francisco and the history of Houston. And you see them just kind of tell the story. And now when I saw that, I approached Chris, one of our lead designers, and I said, we should do a history show just on the old park systems. And we get a lot of ideas with the Daily Parks and Rec show, and some of them just kind of are dead on arrival. And this was kind of one of those, but it was in the back of my head. But when I heard you in the first 10 minutes, you call in for a radio show, and then you kind of hear the radio show going on, but you're not brought up the stage yet. And I was just hearing your voice and how you designed it all. And I'm like, I feel like I'm on a documentary about City Park. And I was like, this is kind of what I was looking for, is someone that would be willing and interested in helping us tell the stories of these historic parks throughout the country. And so that's, then I think we met a couple more times, worked out a few more times together. And here we are, show number 2.
Yeah. Show number 3, actually.
Yeah, that's right. And I didn't even realize this. My first show today, I do a leadership series, 12 noon Eastern time, every Monday through Thursday. Today was our 600th episode. So this is our 601st episode.
Wow.
And we've done quite a big celebration. We made like all kind of stuff every 100 episodes, but we've been just head down building content so much with all the other show hosts. None of us even realized that this morning was going to be our 600th episode. So big shout out to everybody that got us here.
That is amazing.
And now,
congratulations.
Thank you. And Richard will be part of that that effort. I think if he has a good year, he might be adding 52 hours of live content to the team a year. And so we're each kind of just doing our part to just elevate the park systems, the park professionals of America, and all the great work that they do. So with that being said, why don't you and Jovi, and so just for these next few episodes, if everybody could just be enjoy the process. Basically, you asked us to cook a really nice meal, and we invited you back into the kitchen to see all the chaos about how we launch a show.
How we do this. Yeah.
Yeah. So
well, I'm still learning about how you're doing this and setting up, and it's really important setting up a system.
That's it.
That makes it smooth sailing.
Yeah. These first few shows are really me, Richard, and Jovi and Sherry building out the systems of Legacy Parks of America. And hopefully by the end of this, maybe 4, 5, 6 episodes, first ones, we'll have a little factory where we can just, connect with a great park in downtown, Huntsville, Alabama or something, and do a great job on telling their story and producing something that hopefully will last for many generations. I was actually telling somebody in my show today, which maybe you can correct me. I was like, Richard was just reading off all the stats. And at some point, I don't know if it's like the 40s or 50s or 60s, New Orleans built like 8 swimming pools and 50 pocket parks in like 18 months. But I knew my numbers were off. Do you happen to remember those?
No, but
it's buried in there somewhere.
It's remarkable what they accomplished.
It really is.
In such a short period of time.
Yeah.
And you're actually going to see some photos that I did not have in the last.
Yeah.
I actually found that Life magazine article, the entire thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is where I think your gift as a historian really just is going to pay dividends on the quality of what we're creating here, because I think a lot of our other shows talk about, I always interview the directors, the people, the leaders. Some of my other shows interview the programs, the sports programs, the arts programs. What I envisioned is, let's tell the story of the parks. But with your show, you're able to blend the people that built the parks over this 100-plus-year-old park in almost every city in America, and tell the whole story about the people that built it, the people that came through it, and all the transitions that it made. I think it's going to be something special. So I'm excited about this show.
Yeah. And just about the importance of parks.
Yeah.
We need parks. We need more parks. We need more open areas. We need more green space. We need more places for kids to play and for adults to play and engage with each other. I mean, it's good. It's a healthy thing for the community.
Yeah.
And, for cities now, I mean, it's been a tremendous asset to New Orleans to have kids, instead of, out in the streets causing trouble, they have an outlet.
Yeah.
And that's why parks are I mean, I never really realized this until I started to work on this, but parks are extraordinarily important to the health of a city.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think if anybody ever comes to New Orleans, please go by Audubon Park or City Park. I can't imagine somebody looking at those parks and saying, wow, I wish we had one of these in our city. And actually there are a lot of cities that have, parks that are almost as good. I'm kind of partial, but almost as good as ours. And I think
almost as good.
Almost as good. I don't know how they're just going to miraculously put whatever thousands of 300, 400, 500-year-old trees, oak trees, canopy, but they can try.
Well, our city park is actually larger than Central Park.
Yeah, that's crazy.
New York City, and designed by the same people.
Yeah. That's where I think they just have such a rich history. The land, the parks, the trees, the people, like just such a rich history that we're going to try to capture and really do something special for the whole industry.
Yeah.
So, all right, well, let's go ahead and kick it off. We're going to do take 2 of NORDs.
All right.
Jovi, if you want
First,
to go ahead and push us down and come up with the first slide.
yeah, so the first thing we're going to talk about is the birth of NORD. NORD stands for the New Orleans Recreational Department. And it's actually, one of the America's great recreation systems. And long before there was a NORD, before neighborhood baseball leagues, summer playground programs, and packed basketball gyms, there was a simple idea: every child deserved a safe place to play. Today, that may sound obvious, but in the early 1900s, it was a revolutionary concept. To understand the story of NORD, we have to begin not in 1946, when the department was officially created, but 40 years earlier. In 1906, Teddy Roosevelt, there's the guy, he's president. The automobile is still a novelty. New Orleans is a bustling port city filled with streetcars, horse-drawn wagons, and neighborhoods overflowing with children. At the time, there were very few organized public recreation opportunities for young people, and children played on vacant lots, on streets, and wherever they could find an open space. And so a civic leader named Olive A. Stallings believed New Orleans could be better and could do better. So she became one of the city's earliest advocates for public recreation. She helped establish New Orleans' first public playground and spent years promoting the idea that parks and playgrounds were not luxuries, they were necessities, just what we were talking about. So her vision was both simple and powerful. So a playground wasn't merely a place for children to burn off energy. It was a place where they could learn teamwork, develop friendships, improve their health, and become better citizens. And over the next several decades, that idea gained momentum. So New Orleans developed additional playgrounds, swimming pools, and recreation programs, and the city created the New Orleans Playground Commission to oversee many of these facilities. And by the late 1930s, New Orleans already had dozens of recreation sites serving neighborhoods throughout the city. At the same time, the broader movement was taking shape across America. Recreation was increasingly being recognized as an important public service. Experts were discovering that parents had long suspected. Young people who had access to organized activities were often healthier, more engaged in school, and less likely to get in trouble. So recreation wasn't simply entertainment, it was community development. So the war changed America in countless ways. World War II. When it ended in 1945, citizens throughout the country faced new challenges and opportunities. Returning veterans started families, neighborhoods expanded, and the baby boom was beginning. New Orleans was no exception. Thousands of children would soon need places to play, learn, and grow, and civic leaders recognized that the existing collection of playgrounds and recreation programs would not be enough to meet the future demand. And so the city needed a unified recreation system capable of serving every neighborhood. So several influential New Orleanians became champions of that vision. Among them were Lester Lautenschlager, John Brechtel, and G. Jernan Brown, and also Morris F.X. Jeff. Together, they advocated for a citywide recreation department that could coordinate facilities, develop programs, train staff, and bring organized recreation to every corner of New Orleans. They found an ally in Lesseps Chip Morrison. While campaigning for Mayor, Morrison embraced the concept and saw recreation as part of a larger effort to modernize New Orleans and improve quality of life throughout the city. Their efforts led to a landmark moment on September 27, 1946, the City of New Orleans passed Ordinance 16630, officially creating the New Orleans Recreation Department. NORD. The department began operating on January 1st, 1947. The name itself, it was straightforward, New Orleans Recreation Department, but the vision behind it was anything but ordinary. NORD wasn't created simply to run sports leagues. Its mission was to provide recreational opportunities for residents, improve public health, strengthen neighborhoods, and help young people develop physically, socially, and emotionally. It was an ambitious goal. And what happened next was nothing short of remarkable. Within roughly 16 months of its creation, NORD expanded at an astonishing pace. The department built 58 new playgrounds, added 8 swimming pools, operated 91 playgrounds across the city, managed 17 pools, oversaw 8 stadiums, and sponsored 25 baseball leagues. Now think about that for a moment. In less than 2 years, New Orleans created one of the largest municipal recreation systems in America. The growth was so impressive that people around the country began paying attention. And in 1949, Life magazine highlighted the program. There's a girl with a bowling ball there. It's amazing. I found this through Google, and they have past issues of Life. The full issues of Life. You can go to the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So if you look on either side, we have these little pictures of NORD, things happening at NORD. And so the United States Supreme Court Justice Tom C. Clark reportedly described NORD as the most progressive municipal recreation program in the nation. And that's not the kind of recognition normally given to a city recreation department. New Orleans had become a national model. Now let's talk about the separate playgrounds, NORD, Jim Crow, and the long road to integration. When we look back at the creation of NORD in 1946, it's easy to focus on the success story, the rapid growth, the new playgrounds, the swimming pools, the baseball leagues, and the national recognition, all that make for an impressive chapter in New Orleans history. And those accomplishments were real. But there was another side of the story, one that cannot be ignored if you want to understand the full history of recreation in New Orleans. New Orleans in 1947 was a segregated city. Jim Crow laws shaped daily life throughout the South. Schools were segregated, public transportation was segregated, and housing patterns were heavily influenced by racial restrictions. Nearly every public institution operated under a system of separate between Black and white residents, and NORD was no exception. From the day it opened its doors, NORD operated separate facilities for Black and white citizens. In fact, the department maintained what was officially called a Negro division. That terminology sounds jarring today, but it's reflected in the language and policies of the era. The system was based on the legal doctrine known as separate but equal, established by the United States Supreme Court in 1896. In practice, however, separate rarely meant equal. So when NORD began operations in 1947, the disparities were significant. Historical records indicate that more than 100 facilities were designated for white residents, while fewer than 20 served Blacks. The differences weren't merely numerical. Facilities available to white neighborhoods were often newer, larger, and better funded, while Black neighborhoods frequently received fewer resources despite serving large populations of children and families. Yet despite these inequalities, recreation became enormously important within Black communities. For many African-American children growing up in New Orleans during the 1940s and 50s, neighborhood playgrounds provided opportunities that might not have existed elsewhere. They could participate in organized sports, develop artistic talents, attend dances and community events, learn leadership skills, and build friendships. And more importantly, they found places where they belonged. Many Black playground directors became highly respected community leaders. They were far more than supervisors keeping an eye on children after school. They served as mentors, teachers, role models, and community builders. And in some neighborhoods, a playground director became one of the most influential adults in a young person's life outside of family and church. So the importance of recreation within Black communities cannot be overstated. While facilities were unequal, the commitment of the people running those programs often compensated in remarkable ways. Children learned to excel despite limitations. Coaches found ways to build successful teams with fewer resources. Communities rallied around their playgrounds, and neighborhood pride flourished even when funding did not. This pattern reflected a larger reality throughout the Jim Crow South. African-American communities frequently created excellence despite systemic disadvantages. And that same spirit was visible throughout New Orleans' recreation programs. As the years passed, pressure for change began growing across America. The civil rights movement was gaining momentum, and the legal foundations of segregation were beginning to crack. In 1954, the Supreme Court issued its landmark decision in Brown versus Board of Education, declaring school segregation unconstitutional. Although the ruling did not immediately affect recreation programs, it signaled that major changes were coming, and public institutions throughout the South faced increasing pressure to integrate. So New Orleans became one of the most significant battlegrounds in that struggle. The city experienced fierce conflicts over school integration during the early 60s. National news cameras descended on New Orleans. Protesters filled the streets. Families found themselves caught in political and social struggles that would reshape the city for generations. So NORD could not remain isolated from those changes. Recreation programs existed within the same neighborhoods that were experiencing broader social transformation. And as federal civil rights legislation advanced, segregation within public recreation became increasingly difficult to justify or maintain. The watershed moment arrived in 1964 when Congress passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The legislation prohibited discrimination in public accommodations and federally funded programs. For recreation departments throughout the South, the message was clear. Integration was no longer optional, it was the law. So NORD began the process of integrating its facilities and programs. And like many changes during the civil rights era, the transition was not always smooth. Some residents opposed integration. Others feared conflict or uncertainty, and decades of separation could not be erased overnight. Yet, compared with some of the violent confrontations that occurred elsewhere in the South, the integration of recreation facilities in New Orleans was generally less dramatic than the battles surrounding school desegregation. Part of the reason may have been the nature of recreation itself. Children who played together often discovered common interests. A baseball game doesn't care about race. A basketball court has a way of bringing people together, and the shared experience of sports and recreation sometimes succeeded where politics failed. That does not mean integration instantly erased decades of inequalities. Facilities remained uneven. Neighborhoods remained divided. Economic disparities persisted, but something important had changed. Children who previously would have been separated by law could now participate in the same programs, play on the same team, use the same facilities, and compete under the same rules. For a generation of young New Orleanians, recreation became one of the first places where a more integrated future could be experienced. The effects gradually spread throughout the system. New leadership emerged, new opportunities developed, and programs evolved to serve increasingly diverse communities. The identity of NORD itself began to change. So no longer would it operate as separate recreation systems serving separate populations. The goal became a single recreation department serving the entire city. So that aspiration was not always perfectly achieved. Like New Orleans itself, NORD continued to wrestle with questions of equity, funding, and access, but the legal barriers of segregation had finally fallen. And one of the most remarkable aspects of this story is how closely NORD mirrors the broader history of New Orleans. The department was born in a segregated city, grew during the height of the Jim Crow era, confronted the challenges of integration during the civil rights movement, and emerged transformed by those experiences. So in many ways, the history of NORD is the history of New Orleans itself. It's a story of division and resilience, of injustice and progress, and of communities finding ways to thrive even under difficult circumstances. Today, when children gather at a recreation center, join a basketball league, or play baseball at a neighborhood playground, they rarely think about that history. They simply show up to play. But the ability to do so alongside neighbors from every background was hard-won. It reflects decades of social change, legal battles, community leadership, and perseverance. Understanding that history doesn't diminish NORD's accomplishments. It strengthens them. Because his true story isn't that NORD was perfect. The true story is that it evolved, like New Orleans itself, that adapted, struggled, changed, and ultimately became more inclusive than the system that existed when it began. As we'll see in the next segment, regardless of race, background, or neighborhood, one thing united generations of New Orleanians: the playground. For countless children growing up in this city, the neighborhood recreation center wasn't just a place to play, it was the center of community life. So growing up NORD, the heart of neighborhood life. If you ask any lifelong New Orleanian about NORD, the chances are that they won't start by talking about city government. They won't mention ordinances, budgets, or administrative reorganizations. Instead, they'll tell you a story. They'll remember a coach who changed their life, a summer baseball team, a basketball game that went into overtime, a swimming lesson, a talent show, a first crush, or a long summer afternoon spent at the playground. Because for generations of New Orleanians, NORD wasn't simply a recreation department, it was childhood. Understand why NORD became so deeply woven into the fabric of New Orleans, you have to understand the city itself. New Orleans has always been a city of neighborhoods, and people identify strongly with where they grew up. We got the Irish Channel, you got Gentilly, you got the 7th Ward, you got the 9th Ward, Lakeview, Broadmoor, Algiers, Mid-City, New Orleans East, and Uptown. And they all developed their own personalities, traditions, and sense of community. And in many of these neighborhoods, the recreation center became the gathering place that held everything together. Before the age of smartphones, social media, streaming services, and video games, children spent far more time outdoors. After school, they headed to the playground. During the summer, many practically lived there. And for working families, NORD provided something invaluable. Parents who worked long hours knew their children had a safe place to go. They knew supervisors were present, activities were organized, and their kids would spend time with friends rather than sitting at home with nothing to do. So the neighborhood playground became an extension of home. And one of NORD's greatest strengths was its summer playground program. And for thousands of children, summer vacation meant reporting to the playground almost every morning. A typical day might begin with organized games, followed by arts and crafts, softball, basketball, races, contests, music programs, or special events. And many playgrounds organized field trips. Others held talent shows, dances, and neighborhood celebrations. And some even blended recreation with educational activities. The goal wasn't simply to keep children occupied. It was to create an environment where they could grow. So children learned cooperation, leadership, sportsmanship, and responsibility. And often they learned those lessons without realizing it's because they were having too much fun. And so one of the most remarkable things about NORD is that many people's favorite memories had nothing to do with sports. When outsiders think about recreation departments, they often picture baseball diamonds and basketball courts, but NORD was always much more than athletics. There were arts and crafts programs, music activities, dance programs, holiday celebration, community events, and talent competitions. And for children, for some of them, the first public performance happened at a recreation center. For others, it was their first opportunity to discover an artistic talent or develop leadership skills. The recreation center served as a community center in the truest sense of the word. It brought people together. And because New Orleans is a city built on relationships, that mattered. Parents met other parents, children made lifelong friends, neighborhoods got to know one another, communities grew stronger. And many older New Orleanians can still name the exact playground where they spent their childhood, not simply the neighborhood, but the specific playground. And that's a powerful indicator of how important these places became. People didn't simply say they were from Gentilly. They would say they grew up at a Stallings playground. Others would identify with a Gurn and Brown playground, a Hardin playground, Cutoff playground, Rosewall Recreation Center. And the playground became part of their identity. Neighborhood rivalries developed naturally when playground teams competed against one another. The games meant something. Bragging rights were at stake, and children represented not only themselves, but their entire neighborhood. And winning mattered. But belonging mattered even more. So volunteer coaches became local legends. Some coached for decades and received little recognition beyond the appreciation of the families they served, yet their influence was enormous. A volunteer coach might impact hundreds of young lives over the course of a career. They taught sports, certainly, but they also taught discipline, respect, persistence, and accountability. And those lessons extended far beyond the playing field. So you ask successful adults about their childhood memories, and many will point to a coach, recreation leader, or playground supervisor, and NORD provided thousands of those mentors over the years. The timing of NORD's rise also contributed to its success. During the 50s and 60s and 70s, New Orleans neighborhoods were filled with children. The baby boom and generation created enormous demand for recreation, and playgrounds were often bustling from morning until night. Fields were crowded, gyms were active, community centers buzzed with activities, and in many neighborhoods, the playground was one of the most vibrant places in the community. And children from different schools came together there. Friendships crossed classroom boundaries. The recreation center became a common meeting place where entire neighborhoods gathered. And for some children, it was also a refuge, because not every home situation was ideal and not every neighborhood was easy. The playground offered stability, a place where expectations were clear, where adults cared, and where achievement was recognized. So for many young people, those things made a tremendous difference. Perhaps that's why nostalgia for NORD remains so strong today. People aren't simply remembering games, they're remembering a time when neighborhoods felt connected, when children knew one another, when adults knew the kids on the block, and when communities gathered in shared spaces. Of course, no memory is perfect. Every generation tends to view its childhood through a slightly sentimental lens, but when thousands of people from different neighborhoods tell similar stories, it's worth paying attention to. Again and again, New Orleanians describe NORD as one of the defining experiences of growing up in the city, not because it was flashy or expensive, but because it brought people together. And ultimately, that's what recreation does at its best. It creates community. A baseball field becomes a gathering place, a basketball court becomes a social center, a playground becomes a neighborhood institution. The games matter, the activities matter, but the relationships matter most. Those relationships helped shape generations of New Orleanians and created bonds that lasted long after childhood ended. They are part of the reason NORD occupies such a special place in the city's collective memory. In the next segment, we're going to talk about how powerful those influences became when NORD started producing athletes, musicians, and leaders whose names would become known far beyond New Orleans. So we're going to talk about playgrounds to greatness, the athletes, coaches, and leaders of NORD. So every city celebrates its hometown heroes, but NORD's story is remarkable because it produced so many. For decades, New Orleans recreation centers and playgrounds served as training grounds for not only for future athletes, but also musicians, educators, business leaders, civic leaders, and before recruiters, television cameras, or professional contracts, they were simply neighborhood kids learning teamwork, discipline, and confidence on local playgrounds. At its peak, NORD operated one of the largest municipal recreation programs in America. And thousands of young people participated each year in baseball, basketball, football, tennis, swimming, track, and countless other activities across hundreds of playgrounds and recreation centers. Perhaps NORD's greatest contribution was that opportunity wasn't limited by family's income. A child didn't need expensive equipment or private coaching, only the chance to participate, and NORD provided that chance. Baseball was one of the program's earliest and most popular sports. Neighborhood leagues taught commitment, teamwork, perseverance, and sportsmanship. And basketball courts became classrooms where young players learned that improvement required practice and determination. And football programs inspired neighborhood pride and gave children a place to develop both athletic skills and character. And some of those youngsters became household names. Marshall Faulk. He began as a neighborhood athlete, and he became an NFL superstar and Hall of Fame running back. So NORD didn't create his talent, but it gave him a place to compete, to learn, to grow, reminding us that every future star begins as an unknown child on a neighborhood field. And then we have Rusty Staub. He followed a similar path, advancing from New Orleans youth baseball to a major league all-star career, demonstrating the strength of the city's recreation programs. And then we have Linda Tuero. She showed that NORD's influence reached beyond team sports. Rising to international prominence in tennis during the 1970s, she inspired young athletes, especially girls, to pursue excellence. And NORD also helped shape lives beyond athletics. Then we also have Branford Marsalis, now one of America's great jazz musicians. He participated in organized youth programs that emphasized structure, discipline, mentorship, and community. And his story reminds us that recreation develops people, not just athletes. And Branford is actually the brother of Wynton Marsalis, and maybe you all recognize that name. He's also a award-winning, not only award-winning jazz trumpeter, but also an award-winning classical trumpeter. Then we have Wesley Barrow. So no discussion of NORD would be complete without Barrow. More than a coach or administrator, he became one of New Orleans' greatest youth mentors. And for decades, he taught responsibility, respect, leadership, and accountability to thousands of young people. His legacy lives on through Wesley Barrow Stadium, named in honor of his extraordinary service. So ultimately, the famous names tell only part of NORD's story. So for every Marshall Faulk, there were thousands of children who never became professional, but grew into teachers, police officers, firefighters, nurses, military officers, business owners, parents, and community leaders. The lessons they learned on neighborhood playgrounds stayed with them throughout their lives. And that's why recreation has always been about more than sports. Championships matters, yes, but the greater goal is helping young people become confident, capable adults. Generation after generation, NORD accomplished exactly that. Its playground and recreation centers became places where friendships were formed, confidence was built, hidden talents discovered, and by investing in children, NORD invested in the future of New Orleans. And its greatest legacy isn't simply the stars it produced, it's the generations it inspired. So we had a fellow named Gernon Brown. And he coached Jesuit High School of New Orleans in 5 state championships in football and 10 in baseball between 1933 and 1948. He rarely talked about those teams, but he enjoyed telling the story of his 1945-46 basketball team. And when Jesuit found itself without a basketball coach in 45, he took over and he taught math at Loyola at night, and he took over the basketball team for 1 year. And he got the kids, and he actually won. He won a lot of championships, and so there's actually a recreation center, a playground, a stadium that's named after him. So we're going to talk about that. NORD's historic facilities and lasting impact. When people remember NORD, they usually remember the experiences, the baseball game under the lights, basketball tournament, swimming lessons, summer spent with friends at the playground. But every one of those memories happened somewhere. And behind every story was a field, a gymnasium, a swimming pool, recreation center, a neighborhood playground. And over time, these places became far more than recreational facilities. They became landmarks that helped define generations of New Orleanians. One of the most historic is the Berman Stadium in Algiers. Built in 1925, more than 20 years before NORD was created, it became a gathering place where families cheered together and neighbors met and community pride flourished. Nearly a century later, it remains one of the city's best-known athletic landmarks. Then we have the Wesley Barrow Stadium, named for one of New Orleans' greatest recreation leaders. Barrow devoted his life to mentoring young people, and the stadium reflects NORD's belief that its greatest strength has always been people, not buildings. Then in Gentilly, we have the Stallings Playground. It's named after Oliver Stallings, who is one of the original people in the city who said we need, with one of the first people we talked about in this episode here. One of the first people we talked about was Olive, because she believed desperately how kids needed to have recreation. And so they built a playground in honor of her. Then we have the Gernon Brown Playground building, then the Rosenwald Recreation Building, and then the Hardin Playground here. And children often identified with their playground as strongly as their neighborhood, and each developed its own personality. Some known for baseball, other basketball, swimming, dances, talent shows, and community events. And at its peak, NORD operated well over 100 facilities across New Orleans, making recreation available regardless of family's income or neighborhood. And in many ways, the playground became one of the city's most democratic institutions. And these facilities produce outstanding athletes, but their impact reached far beyond sports. So thousands of children learned to swim, developed healthy habits, built friendships, and gained confidence. And parents gathered to watch games, neighborhoods volunteered as coaches, and recreation centers became places where communities grew stronger. So many recreation experts believe youth programs help steer children toward positive choices. And for decades, NORD fulfilled that role by providing safe places after school, structured summer activities, and caring adults who served as coaches and mentors. Those volunteer coaches became the backbone of the city and the system, and year after year, they taught not only athletic skills, but also responsibility, teamwork, perseverance, and respect, lessons that lasted long after the final whistle. As New Orleans changed, some facilities closed while others were rebuilt or replaced, yet many historic NORD centers continued serving the same neighborhoods today, linking generations, and grandparents who once played in those fields now watch their grandchildren compete there. But in 2005, like for 80 years, they've been producing, been helping people in the NORD system. And like for 80 years, they had all these playgrounds, et cetera, et cetera. And in 2005, Hurricane Katrina threatened every NORD building that had been built. The recreation system would face its greatest challenge and write one of the most remarkable chapters in its history. By the summer of 2005, NORD had been part of the New Orleans life for nearly 60 years. Generations of residents had grown up in its playgrounds, played in its leagues, attended its summer programs, and built memories at its recreation centers. Then came Hurricane Katrina. No event in modern New Orleans history has had a greater impact on the city. Entire neighborhoods were flooded, hundreds of thousands of residents were displaced, schools, businesses, churches, and public facilities suffered catastrophic damage. NORD was no exception. The storm and the flooding that followed devastated the entire system, the entire recreation system. Facilities throughout the city were damaged and many suffered extensive destruction. Playgrounds sat underwater, recreation centers became unusable, and athletic fields were covered in debris and mud. In some neighborhoods, the damage was overwhelming. Buildings that had served generations of children suddenly stood empty and damaged, and equipment was destroyed, records were lost, and programs that had operated continuously for decades came to an abrupt halt. The destruction was physical, but it was also emotional. For many people living here, recreation centers represented stability and community, and they were places associated with childhood memories, neighborhood identity, and family traditions. And seeing those facilities damaged or abandoned became another painful reminder of everything the city had lost. The timing made the challenge even harder. Hundreds of thousands of residents had evacuated, families were scattered across the country, and many neighborhoods weren't sure if they would ever fully recover. Schools struggled to reopen, businesses faced enormous uncertainty, and local institutions fought simply to survive. And under those circumstances, recreation might seem like a secondary concern, but in reality became more important than ever. As residents slowly returned to New Orleans, rebuilding community life became just as important as rebuilding buildings. Children needed places to gather, families needed opportunities to reconnect, and neighborhoods needed signs that normal life could eventually return, and recreation helped provide those signs. So one lesson repeatedly observed after major disasters is that recovery isn't solely about infrastructure, it's also about restoring a sense of community. So parks and playgrounds and recreation centers played a critical role because they provide places where people can gather, can reconnect, and can start rebuilding relationships. In New Orleans, that lesson became especially clear. As facilities reopened, they became symbols of progress. A repaired playground or reopened recreation center represented more than recreation. It signaled that a neighborhood was coming back to life, and children laughing at a basketball court became a sign of hope. Yet, rebuilding the system would not be easy. Even before Katrina, NORD was facing tremendous challenges with funding, facilities, issues, administrative issues, et cetera. And as recovery's efforts continued, city leaders began asking an important question. Did the recreation system need more than repairs? Perhaps it needed reinvention. So that discussion eventually led to one of the most significant changes in NORD history, the creation of the NORD Commission. It was established in 2010. The NORD Commission was designed to provide a new structure for recreation services in New Orleans. The goal was to improve accountability, strengthen management, increase community involvement, and create a modern recreation system capable of serving a changing city. The transition represented the most significant organizational change since NORD was originally created in 1946. Under the new model, the commission would oversee recreation programs while continuing to rebuild and modernize facilities throughout the city. Partnerships with community organizations, schools, nonprofits, and other agencies became increasingly important, and the emphasis shifted toward creating a recreation system that reflected the realities of post-Katrina New Orleans. Many improvements followed. We had facilities were renovated or rebuilt. The new programs were introduced. Technology became more integrated into daily operations, and greater attention was given to community input, strategic planning, and long-term sustainability. The city also began investing in facilities that looked different from those of earlier generations. While, we had traditional baseball fields and basketball courts, those were important. Modern recreation increasingly included fitness programs, after-school enrichment, senior activities, wellness initiatives, and broader range of community services. So the needs of residents had changed, and NORD adapted accordingly. That adaptability became one of the organization's greatest strengths. And throughout its history, NORD was repeatedly evolved to meet changing circumstances. It adapted to population growth after World War II, adapted to integration during the Civil Rights Movement, and after Hurricane Katrina, it adapted once again. The challenges, however, did not disappear. Maintaining facilities remained expensive, yes, and recreation departments across America compete with many other public priorities for funding. So participation patterns continue to evolve, and today's children have far more entertainment options than previous generations. So keeping young people engaged requires constant innovation. Yet, despite those challenges, the core mission remains remarkably similar to the vision established in 1946. The goal is still to provide opportunities, strengthen communities, serve young people, and create places where residents can gather, learn, and grow. And those goals mattered before Katrina, and they matter during recovery, and they matter today. So looking back, it's remarkable that NORD survived one of the greatest urban disasters in American history, and many organizations never recover from such disruptions of this kind of magnitude. Yet NORD endured because the need it serves never disappears. Children still need place to play, families need places to gather, neighborhoods still need places that belong to everyone. And in many ways, the story of NORD's recovery mirrors the story of New Orleans itself. The city was damaged, but not defeated. It suffered tremendous losses, yet found ways to rebuild. It changed, adapted, and moved forward while preserving connections to its past. And the resilience is woven into the history of New Orleans. It's woven into the history of NORD. And as we move into our final segment, we're going to talk about a bigger picture. What makes NORD unique among recreation systems in America? Why has it remained so important for nearly 80 years? And what can the rest of the country learn from New Orleans' approach to parks, playgrounds, and community life? Because ultimately, the story of NORD is about much more than recreation. It's about New Orleans itself. So why does NORD matter? We've got a little video we're going to play.
Where we used to ball in the park, where you could get your first start, where you can learn how to swim, while I'm sitting in the bleacher with your mom and them. Marshall Falk used to play at, Odell Beckham used to play at, the Manning brothers used to play at. Put your hands up, let me hear you say, the first place I balled out, where you could learn to run around. The first place I swung a bat, home run at the park, you ain't getting that. Mom and dad sat up in the bleachers, where the coach used to be my teacher. Nord Park, where we used to dwell. Now the Manning name ringing in the NFL. Where we used to ball in the park. Nord. Where you could get your first start. Nord. Where you can learn how to swim. Nord. While I'm sitting in the bleacher with your mom and them. Nord. Marshall Falk used to play at. Nord. Odell Beckham used to play at. Nord. The Manning brothers used to play at. Nord. Put your hands up, let me hear you say Nord. And there you have it. I got my homie Cool Dizzle in the building. Let y'all know about Nord. So come out to the parks and support Nord. Something for everybody at Nord, 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 Nord.
Man, that was
So-
awesome. I love that.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, great job on finding that one.
So the guy who is the white guy, and there is Cooper Manning, who is, you might have recognized the face kind of. He's the brother of Eli Manning and Peyton Manning, and he's a very successful businessman. He didn't go into the sports, but he's become very successful in New Orleans. And so, as we've explored the history of the NORD, one thing becomes increasingly clear that this is not simply the story of a recreation department. It's the story of New Orleans itself. So over nearly 8 decades, NORD has reflected the triumph, challenges, divisions, resilience, and spirit of the city it serves. It has survived social change, economic hardship, natural disasters, and dramatic shifts in how Americans live and spend their free time. Through it all, the organization has remained one of the most recognizable and beloved institutions in New Orleans. So that raises the important question: what makes NORD different? So after all, nearly every major American city has parks and recs programs, departments. Cities across the country operate playgrounds, sports leagues, swimming pools, community centers. On the surface, NORD may appear similar to countless other recreation agencies. But when you look closer, something unique emerges. One of the defining characteristics of NORD has always been its neighborhood focus. Many cities built recreation centers around large centralized facilities designed to serve broad geographic areas. New Orleans took a different approach. The goal was to place recreation directly within neighborhoods so that children could walk to the playground, parents could become involved, and communities could develop a sense of ownership. That decision shaped generations of New Orleanians. People didn't simply participate in recreation programs. They identified with their playgrounds, represented their neighborhoods, and developed loyalties rooted in the places where they grew up. The recreation center became part of the person's identity in a way that is uncommon in many American cities. Few communities embrace neighborhood recreation with the same intensity as New Orleans. That neighborhood culture explains why NORD occupies such a powerful place in local memory. Ask someone where they played ball growing up, and they'll often answer immediately. Decades may have passed, but the connection remains. And the names of playgrounds and recreation centers are remembered almost like the names of schools, churches, or family businesses. And those memories are part of the shared experience that stretches across generations. Another reason NORD stands out is remarkable longevity. Since 1947, it has served New Orleans continuously, touching the lives of hundreds of thousands of residents. Few institutions maintain that level of relevance for so long, especially during periods of profound social and economic change. And throughout these years, NORD adapted while remaining faithful to its core mission. It evolved during the civil rights movement, rebuilt after Hurricane Katrina, and adjusted to change demographics, new technologies, and shifting community needs. That ability to adapt has been one of the keys to its survival. At the same time, NORD offers an important lesson for communities across America. Recreation is often viewed as luxury, something nice to have when budgets allow, yet the history of NORD suggests something different. Recreation is a form of infrastructure, not physical like roads, bridges, or draining, but social. It creates connections between neighbors, provides opportunities for young people, strengthens communities, and improves quality of life. And those benefits may not always be easy to measure, but they are no less important. When recreation works well, people often take it for granted because the results appear gradually. Friendships form, children gain confidence, communities become stronger, neighbors get to know each other, and these changes rarely make headlines, yet they have a profound impact on the health and stability of the city. So challenges have faced this NORD since 1947. Children have more entertainment options today than they have, the smartphones and video games, et cetera, et cetera. Yet the need for recreation may actually be greater than ever. Across America, concerns about physical health, mental health, social isolations, and youth development continue to grow. Recreation departments can increasingly find themselves addressing issues that extend far beyond sports and playgrounds. They help build healthier communities, create opportunities for social interaction, and provide positive environments where young people can learn and grow. And in that sense, the mission of NORD remains as relevant today as it was nearly 80 years ago. The future will undoubtedly bring new challenges, but facilities require maintenance and modernization. Programs will continue to evolve. Recreation leaders will need to find innovative ways to engage future generations while preserving the traditions that made organizations like NORD successful in the first place. So technology will continue to changing how people interact with each other, yet some things remain remarkably constant. Children still need places to play. Families still need places to gather, and communities still need places where people from different backgrounds can come together. Those needs are timeless. So as New Orleans moves forward, NORD will continue playing an important role in meeting those needs. The organization may look different than it did in 1947, but the programs may change, facilities evolve, and new priorities may emerge. Yet the underlying purpose remains remarkably consistent: to provide opportunities, strengthen neighborhoods, and invest in people. So, because in the end, NORD is really about playgrounds, swimming pools. It's not, let me change, let me redo that. Because in the end, NORD is not really about playgrounds, swimming pools, baseball fields, recreation centers. Those are simply the settings where the stories unfold. The real story is about people. It's about the millions of moments that occurred on those playgrounds and ball fields, relationships were formed, lessons learned, and communities that were strengthened. Those experiences became part of the fabric of New Orleans and helped shape the city we know today. That is why NORD matters, not just to New Orleans, but to anyone who believes strong communities are built one neighborhood, one family, and one child at a time. And for nearly 80 years, that has been the mission of NORD, and its story is far from over. And you can play the next video there.
That healthy lifestyle. Get into that groove or get it back. You can build a routine that aligns you with your goals and a team that helps you reach them. NORD is an environment where you can thrive. No matter who you are, no matter what you can do, NORD's got something for everyone.
Yeah, love it. Love it. That's fantastic. I love the videos. Definitely take two as usually we look for like a 1% improvement each week. That was probably like a 50% improvement over the last week. Great job on the new slideshows. Where'd you find the new, all the new images?
I just kept looking,
On Google?
I kept looking on Google, and I would ask chat to give me some more images and give me links. He didn't actually provide the images, just gave me links to where I could find them.
Yeah. Well, while you were talking, I was looking up NORD's. I don't know the new interim director. I knew Larry. He just kind of recently retired. He's been there for like over a decade or something. But I want to say maybe on our next show, we could probably have this interim CEO maybe come as a guest and do some kind of commentary with you, maybe before and after.
Yeah.
That might be a good bit. I think we're kind of ready for that. I mean, I would almost, the one y'all just did. Great job, Jovi, by the way.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, good job.
Yeah, that was a lot better. The photos seemed to be timed much better with than me flipping through them aimlessly last time.
And some of those photos, a lot of the photos I had last week, that just, but they were just all over the place. And so.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was another great take two. So next week you want to do a take three and maybe get somebody from NORD's to actually help us out?
Yeah, sure.
All right. We'll give it a shot. And then after that, I think we're going to hit up City Park and Audubon Park, both of which are gyms in their own right here in the great city of New Orleans, where we kind of we're looking to launch kind of like a history channel of history of Parks and Rec, the legacy Parks of America. We're going to do this every Monday. We'll be working on it and hopefully be able to produce some really good stories for the historic park systems scattered throughout every community in America. So I really appreciate everybody tuning in today. Any last remarks, Richard?
No, I'm looking forward to when I do Audubon Park. Audubon Park is so interesting. It's just got such a huge history. I mean, so does City Park, but Audubon Park is well,
Yeah.
I go to Audubon Park all the time. So, and I work for the Audubon Nature Institute. So,
Yeah. Oh, and I'm sure people that are watching are like, well, you could tell the story of our park. And like, I used to spend a lot of time in San Antonio. They have an amazing park system there as well with those massive trees. I don't know if you've ever been downtown to see those.
in San Antonio,
Yeah, cypress trees.
I've only been there once. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, they have trees that are every bit, maybe even more impressive than our oak trees. And I don't say that.
No way.
I don't say that lightly. These got to be like, I don't know, 700-year-olds. I didn't even know cypress trees could get that big or something, but they're monsters.
They can live 600, 700 years or more. These live oak trees. Really
They've got a couple of them, a couple of cypress trees that are as big as what's the one right there by the zoo called? The life oak or something?
You mean the Tree of Life?
Tree of Life.
But that's not, that was planted in 1740. I mean, and it's a beautiful tree.
Yeah, it's huge.
And the cypress trees are actually related to the redwood.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Yeah, they can live for like the ones that were here when they first came here. They were like 1,000 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's got to be what's going on in San Antonio, because I remember going there as a kid, and I went there recently. But I'm good friends with the director over there, so I'll be hitting up San Antonio to be one of our many.
Awesome.
All right, guys. Richard, thank you so much for doing this little project with us. I think this is going to be beautiful. Jovi, thank you so much for
thank you, Jovi.
doing Take Two, and tune in next Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, 2 p.m. New Orleans time. We're going to do this again and keep getting better and better. So thank you, guys. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Love y'all. Bye.
Adios.
In today's parks and recreation industry, communication, safety, and efficiency go hand in hand. That's where Outdoor Link comes in, delivering smart technology that empowers city departments and community planners to do more, smarter. Outdoor Link's platform connects and automates everything that keeps your parks running smoothly. From lighting and locks to signage, water features, Wi-Fi, and digital advertising. Control and schedule park lights for safety and energy savings. Remotely manage facility access. Coordinate fountains and splash pads. Provide public connectivity. All from one simple, unified platform, giving you real-time control, data, and cost efficiency. For parks and recreation agencies, that means safer spaces, smarter resource use, faster responses, and stronger community engagement. And behind every great park story is great infrastructure. That's why Outdoor Link proudly supports DPRS Media Company, helping the Daily Parks and Rec Show amplify the voices of professionals shaping our communities every day. Outdoor Link, smart, connected solutions for parks, recreation, and beyond.
They say it's Just Rec. Just Rec, where kids learn to try again. Just Rec, where confidence begins. Where teamwork, effort, and fun matter more than trophies. It's not about perfection. It's about participation. It's not Just Rec. It's where kids learn to love the game and themselves. It's Just Rec until they learn teamwork for life. It's Just Rec, but it's everything to them. It's more than rec. It's a movement. It's Just Rec until you realize it's shaping the next generation. Together, we're not just running programs, we're building a culture of confidence, connection, and community. Join us.
In the parks and recreation industry, attention is limited, but influence is everything. Every day, thousands of parks and recreation professionals make critical decisions. Decisions on infrastructure, programs, technology, and vendors. The question is your brand part of that conversation? DPRS Media Network was built to answer that question. We are a dedicated media ecosystem focused exclusively on the parks and recreation industry in the United States. Through a network of daily and weekly shows, we inform, connect, and influence this audience. Our distribution spans multiple platforms: LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, X, Instagram, plus email campaigns, newsletters, podcasts, and live event coverage. This is not a single-channel strategy. It is a multi-platform media engine. Today, our network reaches over 214,000 connections, including 51,000 on LinkedIn, 64,000 on Facebook, nearly 40,000 email subscribers, and thousands more across podcast and social platforms. While some audiences overlap, our true value is not just reach, it is relevance. We speak directly to parks and recreation directors, program managers, and industry leaders, an audience that is highly targeted and actively engaged. Through DPRS Media Network, your brand integrates seamlessly into this ecosystem. Through sponsored show segments, targeted advertisement placements, podcast features, and host-read promotions, even custom branded content. Not as interruptions, but as part of the conversation. And we don't just operate online. We attend over 15 major parks and recreation conventions each year, reaching more than 24,000 professionals in person. Through live shows, interviews, and on-site media coverage, we position our partners at the center of the industry. Every piece of content we produce is amplified across our entire network. Multiple shows, multiple hosts, multiple platforms. Your message doesn't appear once, it multiplies. This is more than advertising. It is strategic positioning within a trusted media network built specifically for the parks and recreation industry. If your goal is to reach decision makers, build credibility, and stay top of mind, then it's time to partner with DPRS Media Network. Apply for partnership or sponsorship today. Let's position your brand where the industry is already paying attention.